And my name's James Motegi. I work for the African Plant Nutrition Institute. I'm the Senior Prongala Manager and the leader for soil and livelihoods within the African Plant Nutrition Institute. We can see that there is a diversity of people from different institutions here. And now I'll call Dr. Kaushik to give the welcome remarks. Dr. Kaushik is the Director General, APNI.
Thank you, James. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of the African Plant Nutrition Institute, I welcome you all to this very important workshop. I'm assuming that you all know about the African Plant Nutrition Institute. We are headquartered in Morocco, but we have 3 other offices, one in Setat, Morocco, that looks after our North African operations. We have the Nairobi office charged with the East and Southern Africa, and we have the Yamoussoukro, Côte d'Ivoire office that looks at the West African operations. Since our development, we went through a process of identifying the niche areas where our expertise could be utilized to create changes on the ground. As you know from your past experience with working with IPNI and now with APNI, that our core competence is in plant nutrition. And we want to utilize that expertise in collaboration with our partners and other stakeholders to look at how best we can utilize plant nutrition to improve soil health, create better resilience in production systems. We are all aware of the climate shocks that African production systems are exposed to now, and also wanted to use that knowledge to see how precisely we can use plant nutrition to achieve all these different outcomes. Now, as you can see, that one of these standees had our mission, which is enhanced plant nutrition for a resilient and food secure Africa. Now, we do believe that plant nutrition has a major role to play within the agricultural development space in Africa, provided we use the nutrients sustainably. And there comes the importance of this workshop. How to define sustainability. We know that these are social, economic, and environmental aspects of sustainability we want to look at through all our work. But at the same time, the matrices, or rather the indicators that we should measure to say that, yes, we are doing things sustainably is not very clear at this point. And so sitting with you, coming from different organizations with different expertise, we want you to advise us how best, what are the indicators that we should look at, and that would create an ecosystem where all of us are looking at the same things, same indicators, same matrices to define the sustainability aspects of our work. And so I'm very pleased that all of you are here. I know the morning traffic is notorious in Nairobi, and so I'm sure that you had to take a few challenges to come here, and we are very thankful for that, and I hope that by the end of the day we will have some ideas, if not full clarity, as to how to go about measuring and reporting sustainability of our actions. Thank you very much.
You don't sound lively. Is it that you're still trying to wake up? Habari zenyu? Thank you. Mimi naitwa Pauline. Natoka Zimbabwe. I'm happy to see you all here. Thank you for making the time, like what our director has said. Thank you for making the time to come for this workshop. And we look forward to learning a lot from you. We know you have a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge that will help us in our pursuit for agricultural sustainability. So I'm going to just give you an overview of the Sustainable Agriculture Matrix, which is a framework that was developed for measuring agricultural sustainability. So one of the challenges that we have in Africa is that we are food insecure. So we need to produce more affordable and nutritious food. We need to do this efficiently. So we need to use adequate inputs, not too much, not too little, so that we don't load the environment with the nutrients or the other resources. So we need to promote resource use efficiency. So food insecurity has declined in other parts of the world. Globally, it has declined, but Africa has lagged behind. If you look at the figure at the top on the left, you can see that Africa is lagging behind. Africa is the red at the bottom. You see other parts of the world, food production, food security is increasing, whereas it's really stagnant in sub-Saharan Africa. Part of this is because we really don't use fertilizers for our crop production. We use very little. In the last decade, we were using 8 kilograms, and then we had a call to increase fertilizer use to about 50 kilograms per hectare, but we are still sitting at less than 20 kilograms per hectare of nutrients. So it's clear that fertilizer use must increase in Africa. So this figure at the bottom, so this figure here is showing the fertilizer use across the globe. The darker it is, the more fertilizer is used. You can see how pale Africa is. It shows that we are really behind in terms of fertilizer use. We really need to increase our fertilizer use, but we need to learn from other regions so that we don't overuse the fertilizers. So we need technologies to increase yield, our crop yields, and profit. So this is something that happens in the immediate term. But we need to be cognizant of the long-term effects of utilization of these nutrients. So we need to watch out that we have minimum environmental impact with the use of the fertilizers. And APNI, African Plant Nutrition Institute, we believe that we can contribute. We are in a position to contribute to transformative African agriculture through best practice nutrient management practices, and hence we really think that we can contribute to sustainable agriculture on the continent. So we all know about the SDGs. Most of our governments have ratified the Sustainable Development Goals, which were in 2015. And we know that agriculture sustainability is key to the attainment of these Sustainable Development Goals. But how do we measure agricultural sustainability? So it is critical for us to develop methods to assess the performance of our agricultural systems. And this is based on 3 dimensions: social, economic, and environment. So we need to speak to all the 3 dimensions for us to achieve sustainability in agriculture. We need to define, to have a definition of agriculture sustainability, but more importantly, we need to have frameworks to measure the agriculture sustainability for us to be accountable to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we need independent, transparent, and consistent measurement of agricultural sustainability monitoring to ensure that what we are doing is contributing towards agricultural sustainability. And Sustainable Agriculture Matrix is one such key framework that we can use for tracking agricultural sustainability. But what is Sustainable Agriculture Matrix? It is a framework that was developed by our colleagues at the University of Maryland. This matrix is a collection of indicators for measuring sustainable agriculture. So it was developed for more than 150 countries, including Kenya. It uses 18 indicators that are based on the 3 dimensions that I mentioned earlier: social, to speak to the society, economic, and environment. So this framework was developed starting 2017, and initially they had more than 200 indicators, but they had to go through a lot of iterations to streamline which indicators can we use, because honestly, we cannot use many indicators, otherwise it becomes laborious. So out of the more than 200 indicators, they were left with 18 indicators. And these were chosen based on their impact. So the selection criteria, the indicators had to measure performance versus the practice. They had to have a monotonic relationship, which means that, for example, if we are talking of greenhouse gas emissions, if you increase greenhouse gas emissions, you are reducing agricultural sustainability because of the impact the greenhouse gases have on the climate. And then the data coverage was important. So the indicators were developed using minimum data, but it was reasonable enough to cover at least 80 countries, and the data had to at least cover 3 years in terms of the spatial coverage. The goals of this framework, the same framework, is to measure performance of agricultural sustainability and to invest the socio-economic and ecological indicators related with agricultural sustainability. So after the development of the same framework, we came up with a consortium of members from different countries, different organizations, in an effort to collaborate with across the different countries in pursuit of attaining agricultural sustainability. Our aim as African Plant Nutrition Institute is to promote agricultural sustainability in Africa. So this same consortium is funded by the Belmont Foundation. We have partners in Austria, Brazil, Ghana, and here Kenya, Morocco, South Africa, Turkey, and the USA. So APNI is covering 3 countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Morocco. So the current project that we have is short-term, and it involves stakeholder engagement. For example, today, this is one of the stakeholder engagement activities that we do so that we can get your feedback to ground truth the data that was collected. The data that was collected is very minimum, and we want to have a feel from you on how is this data, does it speak to what we know in the Kenyan agriculture system, focusing on the maize food systems. So we want to check if the indicators that are used in SEM are adequate to capture key sustainability challenges that we face in this country and in Africa as a whole. So in APNI, we are trying to adapt this framework to a finer scale, focusing on the food system. In Kenya, we are focusing on the maize food system. In Morocco, we are focusing on the olive systems. And in Ghana, we are focusing on cacao systems. So the framework was developed for the national scale, and we want to see if we can fit it to the finer scale. So it has 18 indicators based on 3 dimensions: economic, environment, and social. So each of these dimensions, we have 6 indicators. These 6 indicators speak to given themes. For example, with the economic, we cover the aspects of agricultural labor productivity, credit availability, farmers' risk, agricultural support, and market access. And for these aspects, we have 6 indicators that are given on this side. So we have agricultural labor productivity, finance access, price volatility, government support, trade openness, and food loss. So those are the 3 that cover the economic. And then we have the environment, where we have aspects like water availability, pollution, land use and loss of biodiversity, climate change, and soil health. And we also have 6 indicators, which are water consumption for irrigation, nitrogen surplus and P surplus, speaking to the pollution issue, land use change, greenhouse gas emissions, and soil erosion. And then for the social dimension, we have 4 aspects that we look at: rights and equality, farmers' well-being, health and nutrition, and resilience. And for this, we have 6 indicators as well, which are land right, gender gap, rural poverty, undernourishment, food affordability, and crop diversity. So these are the 18 indicators that we have. We are not saying these are exhaustive. That's why we are coming to you to figure out if these speak to the agricultural sustainability issues in Kenya, or do we need to add other indicators that are not presented here. So using the data that was collected initially, we have this score in Kenya. So this is the score averaged across 4 years, from 2010 to 2014. What this is showing is overall performance of sustainability in agriculture in Kenya. It shows it's in the orange scale. So when we have green, it shows that the performance of that indicator is showing that it is sustainable. When it's red, it's showing that we are operating dangerously above our threshold. So it means that that indicator, the performance of that indicator, is unsustainable. When it's orange, it's in between. If we look at the economic side of things, you see everything is orange, which means it's an area of concern. And when we have this arrow going up, it shows that it's actually increasing in that negative direction. So we are becoming even more unsustainable. When we look at the social, it's close to red, which means that in Kenya, the performance the performance of our agricultural systems is unsustainable in the social dimension. So we look at issues like land rights. It's in the orange. We have the gender gap, undernourishment, and food availability in the red, which is a major cause of concern. But of course, we need to see if this data that we have is speaking to what we know. And then the one that is sustainable in that dimension is crop diversity. Because it's limited data. We don't have much data that was collected. This is where we can contribute as a group. And then when we go to the environment dimension, water consumption, we don't have much irrigation. That's why the water consumption is still sustainable. Nitrogen surplus, we are not using enough nitrogen in our maize food system. That's why we don't have excess that is lost to cause pollution. But for some reason, the data we have shows that phosphorus is going towards the unsustainable side. It is increasing. Land use change is also in the orange. And then we have soil erosion being in the red, which I think is an area of concern. It has been an area of concern for a long time. And then we have greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not sure about the greenhouse gas emissions. This is for us to discuss, so the jury is out there. So this figure is showing the performance over time of these indicators. So what is showing is speaking to this overall performance, water consumption and nitrogen surplus, we are really doing okay. P surplus, we have patches. It's changing over time, going to the unsustainable levels. Land use change, greenhouse gas emissions increasing in the last several years, and soil erosion consistently being unsustainable. And then we have other indicators that have no data. Crop diversity in the social space, it's green. Food affordability, undernourishment, rural poverty, and gender gap, all being in the red, which is an area of concern. But we need data for rural poverty and land rights. We also consider the synergies, the relationship between the indicators. So the relationship is complex, where we can have synergies or trade-offs. So what this means is when we improve performance of one indicator, do we improve performance of the other indicator, which will result in a synergy? Or when we improve the performance of an indicator, do we cause a decline in the performance of another indicator, which is a trade-off? So we have these here, which shows the different pairs, the correlation between different pairs. When it is orange, it means it's positive, which means we have synergies. When it's blue, it is negative, which shows that we have trade-offs. And when it's yellow, it shows that the relationship is not significant. The ones that are gray, we don't have data to do the correlation analysis. So it shows that water consumption and N surplus, so when you increase the performance of water consumption, you also tend to increase the performance of the N surplus. Whereas when we increase the performance of water consumption, we tend to decrease the performance of soil erosion. So we need to look at these trade-offs and synergies today to see if this is indeed what we know in the agricultural sector in Kenya, or how can we improve the data that we have to contribute to this framework that we have. I believe that is all that I had to say today. I hope we will have a productive workshop today, and I look forward to interacting with all of you. In this moment, I will ask you if you have any questions, any points of clarification you need from me.
Thanks for your elaborate description in a short while for something that I think is huge. I just got a little bit confused in terms of the greens in elements of sustainability and wondered if they juxtapose.
In this figure?
Yes, yes. Specifically on water consumption, we are a water deficient country, and I wondered how sustainable that seems to be. And then again, I'm looking into the three thematic areas of the indicators: the economic, environmental, and social, and the social. And I wondered if some of those variables that you're considering are positive in one of those elements and negative in another. For example, on social and water, specifically talking about gender as well, I wondered how now that comes out to be positive when you're talking about Kenya, and specifically in areas where we have issues, like in drought-prone areas, as well as with women on handling water dynamics. So if you could elaborate, please, on how you came up with the green on that.
Okay, I'll try to elaborate on that, and I have my colleagues here who can help me add more. So, water consumption, yes, the indicator is calculated looking at, with the water that we have, how much are we drawing out of that water that we have. It is a water deficient country, but if we look at this indicator is talking more in terms of irrigation water. So we have less than 6% of the agriculture in Kenya being under irrigation. So it means that the water that we have available for irrigation, we are not really using it, we are not using a lot of it to the extent that it becomes unsustainable. That's why that indicator is green. It doesn't mean that we have enough water in this country. It is deficient, and it is something that is beyond our control, because this is a natural phenomenon. But yeah, in terms of this indicator, it is green. Have I answered you satisfactorily on that?
So in terms of the sustainable aspect of it, I'm wondering then if it's green when you're indicating it's sustainable when it's actually being underutilized in its context. And therefore, for me, I'm wondering how then, if the fact that it's not being used, how then is it said to be sustainable in that context?
Okay, so the idea is, this indicator is looking at abstraction of water resources that are available. Are we abstracting too much water that we depleting the resources that we have? This is what the indicator is speaking to. Yes, we are underutilizing it because there is potential to increase the land under irrigation. That is a different sort of concern. But this indicator is really talking about, with what we have, are we drawing water in a sustainable way or in an unsustainable way? Sustainable in the sense that we are not over abstracting the water that we have.
The question is, are we unsustainably wasting the water resources that we have? Are we using that water in a way that much of it gets wasted, and therefore much of it gets wasted? Just like even when we talk of forest and we talk of forest degradation in Kenya, you know, we come from the point of the land areas that are forested. So in this case also is about the quantities of water we have and whether we are using those ones sustainably or we are wasting more of it. If we are wasting more of it, then it becomes unsustainable. But these are issues that we shall ultimately during the day validate the kind of data that is presented here by Pauline this morning.
I just wanted to add a couple of points with what James said. Pauline, would you agree that the indicators, the point where we got involved, up to that point, it's more environmental issues like water. I mean, if we are not extracting enough water, then it's sustainable, but it's not looking at what's going to do to production systems.
Correct.
Phosphorus, if we are not using it, it's sustainable, but again, it's not looking at what's going to happen to the production system. So these are the things we need to, I think that's the purpose of this gathering today, is that clarify, rectify, and make it more reasonable and useful, I guess.
Yeah, precisely, because if we look at even nitrogen, we are saying we are sustainable, but are we really using enough nitrogen and phosphorus in our systems? In fact, what we are doing is we are mining the nutrients from the soil, which is in itself unsustainable. But these indicators are speaking to pollution. Are we overusing? So we, in that same way, we may come back and say, okay, in the context that we are speaking of locally, this is not as important. We probably need to focus on that other area. How do we increase utilization of the water so that we improve agricultural production? You also talked about gender. I don't know if I still remember the question properly. Yeah, some of the indicators are a cause of concern. This indicator is talking about gender equity, the gender gap, that is something that we all know, that women and children are underrepresented, and their contribution to decision-making in agriculture is something that we are concerned with. And as a result, it's not surprising that we have this indicator as being read in this case. But of course, that is also something that we need to discuss in our deliberations today. And then you also talked about these relationships between different pairs. So if we improve the performance of the water consumption, which is increasing, well, in this case, it's saying we don't overuse the water. It's affecting the gender indicator negatively. It's also because the women do not have decision-making positions in society to contribute to the water consumption.
Essentially, you're meaning what can be positive in one dimension can turn out negative, and therefore
precisely
affect the whole dynamic of those areas you're concerned.
Yes.
Right.
So in an effort to improve performance of one indicator, we might sacrifice the performance of another indicator. Or in an effort to improve one indicator, we might improve the performance of another indicator. So those are the synergies, the trade-offs that we want to look at. It's not simple, it's complex. It's sometimes you end up having to find sort of a balance. You cannot always have a win-win situation. Sometimes you have a win-lose situation. We can continue dialoguing as we go throughout the day. Thank you so much for listening. At this point, I'll hand it over to Thomas to give the objectives of this workshop.